के चुनाव को नए हिंदुस्तान की एक नई नींव के रूप में मैं देख रहा हूं। न्यू इंडिया।
You've still not reached 9119. That was the prevailing.
9114 now. 9114.55. 9119. Okay, it's an all-time high now. 9119. 9122 now on the Nifty. So all-time high has been crossed.
So it's the first, full trading hour that the Nifty has spent above 9,000, Sonia. It opened above 9,000, it stayed above 9,000, and it's closing above 9,000. The first time in our history.
A political turning point, says Credit Suisse. BJP on course for 2019 claim many editorials. The markets today hitting new records. And what about the reform agenda? That is the big question. Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us on this special show. I'm Shireen Bhan, and here are the top 5 questions that we intend to raise on this show. So let's go straight to the big picture. Coming in at number 1, is the government now more emboldened to undertake radical reforms? That's the question that we're asking. At number 2, will the universal basic income scheme be the next big thing as far as the government's reform agenda or unprecedented steps are concerned? At number 3, will the shift from minimum government, maximum governance to a pro-poor tilt be the evolution of Modinomics? That's a question that we're asking. At number 4, the markets have clearly cheered the government's victory, the BJP's victory, but does the rally have more legs? Are we going to see the momentum continue from here on? And at number 5, will the government now push strategic disinvestment and perhaps even privatization, which is what the previous NDA regime had done? Those are some of the key questions that we are going to be discussing with our guests. Joining us today, a group of experts to speak about politics, economy and Modinomics. With us, veteran market expert Manish Chokhani, who's assessed the performance of this government. Also on the show, Nick Parsons, research head of Australia Bank. Philip Lizzie-Bach of Credit Suisse, Nalin Kohli, spokesperson of the BJP, and S. Narayan, the former finance secretary. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on the show. Let me go first to Manish Chokhani. Manish, thanks very much for joining us on the show. What is your reading and your own assessment of Modinomics in the context of this victory?
The fact is that they are, in a sense, replumbing the whole architecture of India, which was built on the edifice of the state is, my baap, and they will hand out everything to the poor who are expected to remain poor, and thereby in gratefulness they will keep re-electing governments. And by now saying I will put the power in the hand of the citizen by just providing platforms and opportunities to let the citizen take control of their life and thereby, get the growth from bottom up to come up. I think that's the big fundamental change which this government is attempting. I think the point he made about making the ease of doing business is absolutely right. Having said all of that, and I'm completely on board with what BJP is doing and way Prime Minister is moving. When you get political space like he now has, I would expect as a market participant and an investor and a patriot that our aspiration now has to get higher, because the youth in UP and including in we had Bombay elections as well, they have voted really for a faster rate of growth and for job creation and for opportunities to multiply. So while we are doing the right things to eliminate corruption and subsidies and put power back in people's hands, to get an economy moving you need 3 things. You need capacity creation, which we don't have enough of investment happening, either at the center or state levels, and certainly not in the private sector. B, you need a lot of efficiency in terms of all this turmoil you face when you have to deal with the toll nakas of the governments, which hopefully goes away with things like GST and the simplification of forms and ease of doing business. But the third really is velocity of the economy, which we are not getting because the big choke point is the NPAs. So if you do not get the public sector banking fixed and move those assets out from the public sector into, I would suggest as an investment banker, they should be taking over all these dud steel plants and power plants and let the PSUs or the government run them. The way the US did it with General Motors, took them out of bankruptcy and quickly turned the company around. And at the same time to recycle old government assets, which are just sitting there and doing nothing in terms of efficiency. If you look at how Hindustan Zinc was transformed or Maruti was transformed, I think that whole recycling is what I would expect political space to be now there for. And you rightly said about labor.
Okay, you've given. I'll come back to you in just a second. I'll just come back to you in just a second, Manish. We've got a very short window with Nick Parsons, so let me just bring in a quick word in from him. Let's take a look at what the brokerages are making of this victory, and let me get Nick to comment on that. Nick, what do you believe is going to be the impact of this electoral result on our markets? I mean, we've seen the reaction today, but do you see the momentum continuing, and what is the market now going to be betting on?
Well, good afternoon from London. I think the interesting feature is on the foreign exchange markets, where on a day when the dollar has done well, the Indian rupee is actually the best performing currency in the entire world. So it gives you, I think, a very quick and easy snapshot of how global investors are seeing it. Yes, they were scared off to some extent in the autumn of last year, worried about the implementation of the demonetization program. But now that those worries seem to have been allayed, now that we're returning to growth, and certainly in the wake of the elections this weekend, the Indian rupee tells you everything you need to know about international investors' reaction. It really has been a very solid performance overnight.
So, Nick, a quick final question before I let you go. What is it that investors are now going to be watching out for? You've talked about very rightfully the reaction that we've seen in the currency market. But in terms of specifics, if we're betting on the domestic consumption story, what is it that you would expect from the government next?
Well, it's more about momentum. And it's one thing to have a popular mandate and to have that given to you by the electorate, but I think as long as we can see some positive momentum across a whole variety of industries, it doesn't have to be industry specific, it just has to be a sense of achievement and of milestones. And if international investors can look at a scorecard where they see progress being made on many fronts, then I think the rupee can consolidate its position as being the most favoured of the EM currencies in the region. So I do think it bodes very well.
It bodes very well. Manish Chokhani, let me get you in on specifically the market reaction. We've spoken with a whole bunch of global experts who track the India story, from Chris Woods, of course, Nick here on the show, and everyone alluding to the fact that India is one of the most exciting emerging market stories. In fact, Chris Woods saying he's already so overweight India that he can't do any more. But from a valuation perspective, from a momentum perspective, from a global perspective where the Fed is going to act, we've already seen the Brexit movement now start today. How will India stack up in the context of this win and global factors?
Well, Shireen, this is, like the Prime Minister himself described it as the golden period for the BJP. It's also the golden period for India, because our demographic dividend really comes to its peak in 2022. If we seize the moment, we are really the only large economy which will continue to have unit volume growth. And the government's balance sheet is actually in great shape, as opposed to all the OECD countries where they really have destroyed their balance sheets and the central banks are levered 99:1 or whatever that number is. They really have no engines of growth left in the world. It just presupposes that India is going to deliver on its promise. And the point I even made about the electorate in India is actually voting the same way that the markets are, that they're giving a mandate to a man who has demonstrated his intentions are absolutely right. The party's thinking is in the right place. It's now time for actually accelerating that and getting to this 10-11% GDP growth number, which can help to create jobs and thereby provide opportunities and thereby also provide earning momentum to the market. So if it all is now lined up perfectly, it all now depends on how well this is executed. Because even when he won the general election, we used to joke here that short of striking oil, there's no way he can meet market expectations. So he did the next best thing. The oil price is halved and provided a fiscal bonanza to India. So with so much of luck now in your favor and the right thinking, I remain optimistic.
Well, you're right on that front, Manish. And let me very quickly run our viewers through what the top brokerages make of this electoral victory. CLSA, Chris Woods, India is the most exciting emerging market story in the global context. That's Chris Wood. India, as I said, is one of the most exciting markets. Adrian Mowat, JP Morgan, positive on emerging markets, including India. The markets to remain confident as long as the government is pro-business and pro-reforms. Jeffrey says there may not be more than a pop for the market in the near term, and Credit Suisse believes that this is a political turning point. So that's the market verdict at this point in time. We are going to slip into a quick break, but when we return, we'll do the Rajya Sabha arithmetic for you, and we'll take up the issues that both Manish Chokhani and S. Narayan were bringing up. We'll put those questions to Nalin Kohli and take you through what we should expect going forward. Stay on with us. You're watching the CNBC TV 18 special.